everybody, this is Monty Steed, and welcome to Star Studio, where we bring you some of the biggest movers and shakers in the business. There are moments in musical, what we call rolling out music's digest, and there's a phenomenon. Eric Scott Reed, welcome to Rolling Out.
Thank you, Munson. I appreciate you all having me here.
When you think about individuals coming to see you, you've got a special release getting ready to happen. Where are you taking us in the musical journey of what we should be thinking about where music is headed based on where you're creating a pathway?
Whew, I don't know if I claim the right to tell people what they should be thinking. My main objective is for people to be open to embrace whatever it is I'm putting down. They don't have to like it, but it would be nice if they did. With the understanding that as an artist, what I create is primarily for my own enjoyment, and it's an expression of what's within me. And hopefully I can share that with somebody else who might enjoy it. But as far as this latest release out late, it's sort of a convergence, a culmination of over 50 years of life experience, personal life experience, my spiritual life, my musical life.
The journey, I made a pilgrimage probably 3 weeks ago to LA. There was this huge exhibit of phenomenal pianist Alice Coltrane.
Yes.
They had the exhibit. Obviously, you know who she is. I love that you talk about Outlate, but if people were thinking about it as a meal and they were taking Outlate with them, what are you serving as the appetizer when they first begin to listen to this particular record coming from your soul?
It's as if you are having a meal at a restaurant that is a direct expression of himself through food. So, for instance, you might get chicken, rice, and vegetables, right? But the way this particular chef makes his or her chicken, maybe with a certain kind of oil, maybe with a certain kind of spice that you can't quite identify, but it's familiar because chicken is familiar, obviously. But the spices that are added are like, it's more than salt, it's more than pepper, it's not garlic, it's not onion. What is this? What, cinnamon? Is this cinnamon in this chicken? You know what I'm saying? Because that would certainly be unusual. And I feel as though out late, with the analogy of it being a meal, you're going to hear some familiar things by some familiar musicians. We're all well into our 50s and 60s. So we've been out here for a little while. But you're going to hear some things that you hadn't heard before. And you're going to hear and taste a little something that's like I said, I know this is familiar. I know this taste, but I'm not quite sure what this spice is. Do I like this? Okay, I'm gonna give this about 5 stars and come on back. That's
Right.
that's what I'd like people to take away.
We talk about 5 stars. Now I'm actually in a lounge or I'm sitting there waiting for you to come on stage. And obviously, how do you want them to understand that you have grown into the spirit that you are now, where you're more of an open book about all those things that you may have wanted to say? It really ain't your business, but just so that y'all keep wanting the idea of I'm just going to let you know a few more things about me because I've grown in who I am and what I see myself as.
It's an interesting thing as human beings, and I'll speak specifically as Americans. We have an idealized perception of individuals, and Americans are very in your face, very forthright. We often use euphemisms, but sometimes we're just like super direct and we'll just ask you your business. You married, you got kids, we'll just ask. Like you'll be sitting next to somebody on the plane, complete stranger. And this person is like, are you writing a biography? Are you with the Fed? What's going on? And I think with me finally accepting and understanding that although the average person does not really want to know your truth. It's like when we say, hey, how you doing? And then the other person responds, do you have an hour for me to tell you? And of course, they don't. They just want you to keep it pushing. I'm doing all right and keep on going, right? So for me, my truth is out here, whether you asked for it or not. But you have invested in this project, and this project is an expression of my truth. Whereas before, in previous projects and all throughout my career, I've pretty much just put the music forward and the ideals and ideas about jazz and living as an American, living as an African American, and what swing is, and being able to put the elders of the music on my shoulders, Art Blakey and Elvin Jones and Paul Chambers and Art Tatum, and always walking around. And I made that my entire personality. So now, without late, this is all my truth. I still have those cats, Clora Bryant and Betty Carter. I still have them right here, but I'm not really listening to them so much. They're just there for support. I think somewhere in the New Testament of the Bible, it mentions something about having a great cloud of witnesses, all of the ancestors that have gone on to glory cheering you on. I think something like that was said by T.D. Jakes. So this album really is a true expression, whether you want that truth or not. You know, it's tricky. Once you establish boundaries, all of a sudden people get, well, yeah, I'm not the problem. You are.
I love that because we're at a motion in life where we're really saying, "Hey, I can be me. I want to give this to you in love. It's a gift." And I think now artists, particularly those in the jazz ilk, have continued to shine truth, which is why I was sharing kind of like a pilgrimage to go hang out with Alice Coltrane and just be in the midst of someone who truly gave a spiritual lift. And I tell young people when they begin to experience jazz, I said, well, it can tell you about yourself if you'll listen. You can grow into a new suit if you choose to put it on.
I love that.
It's just if you listen. But when you think about this record, how can people close their eyes and where would you like them to go meditate if they just listen to what this record is?
You know, with my music, there's always a story behind every composition. It's kind of like reading poetry or looking at a painting or whatever. People interpret in the way that it resonates with them. So I can say a song like Shadow Boxing, which is a song that I wrote for this wonderful drummer by the name of Ethan Kogan. He also goes by the name Shadow. I wrote it for him, and it's supposed to be a drummer's feature, which it is. Doesn't have to be, but that's the way I wrote it, sort of in the vein of Herbie Nichols. It's a drummer's feature, and it's supposed to exemplify the idea of the battles we face in life, the adversaries, and a lot of them seen and unseen, often unseen, constantly boxing, sometimes boxing with yourself. But somebody else might say, well, Eric, I appreciate, what you wrote and the narrative. But when I heard it, my ear immediately goes, okay, what did you hear? Because then I'm motivated and inspired even more by that person, just like you advised these young folks to try the suit on and grow into it. That means they were really listening. They didn't just take my narrative of what I said the song was. They were listening for what I was trying to put down, but they heard something else. And that's okay. As artists, we are not always the experts on our own works. We're the ones creating them, but the interpretation is entirely individual. It's up to the person that is embracing it.
Thank you for that. The idea of openness, I'm glad as an artist, I typically am not open to the interpretation of where the gift is. I think that for those of you listening, he's open, but I think you should put it on like the artist made it. That's the value proposition of it being a gift from your soul.
Sure.
You really start to make it yours, then recreate it. Obviously, you can create your own version of it, but I do believe that there's a passionate gift inside that comes forward in shadow boxing.
I
um,
agree. Thank you.
when you title it. You know what I mean? It is actually orange. Now, you know, whether it's cinnamon, it's there. That's what it is. I
Yeah.
made it for you. And if it's a, you know, you can make it a bass feature. You can make it a piano feature, but it's actually made for these drummers out here. That young drummer who I made it for this one, but that young drummer who wants to know this is made for a drummer,
Mhm.
and you're important to this group, a timekeeper, and I
Yeah.
want you to keep time with me, then walk with me. And I think that we sometimes, even as creatives, because we're not permanently here outside of what our gifts will be.
Hmm.
So the reinterpretation for me often when you have, and I've been given the gift to speak. I can now, you're in trouble now, Eric, because I'm like, well, you know, I talked to my man, Eric, and he said shadow boxing was actually made for this drummer feature. So I don't care what y'all say, I talked to the man. So on this day, at this time on a Wednesday, he said it was this. Now, y'all can interpret, that's fine. But it is an interpretation
Yes.
of the gift and love that was put down, recorded, created, for two people to share with the world so others could actually, once again, put this suit back on that was made for you. It's
Yes.
kind of like, you know, you listen to dropping things. And I told a friend, I listen to Betty Carter, she's trying to drop something on
Yes.
you. Like, and you might not understand it. Things get dropped on black people all the time.
All the
You
time.
just may not, just dropped. I didn't even ask for that. And you dropped, you know, I'm getting on the plane. You handed me a cup. Oh God, where did that come from? And so just being about, and for those who have any moments of being around a great creative person, what have you been able to learn and grow that you would like other young individuals growing in life to understand that you've always taken as gifts when somebody was whispering in your ear, Eric, that's good. Or when somebody said, nope, come on, time. We on time. Like that means 10 minutes early. We on stage. No, Eric, I know you practice it, but this is when you come in. What would you share as now, even in this record, another sound, another track that you really think moves you forward and can maybe move those who are just getting into jazz, see this and say, you know what, I need to take another listen because he said this about this record.
I would encourage young musicians to always be honest in their intent, to always be authentic, but to always be loving with your gift. And we've seen it time and again where you have phenomenal artists who can write, sing, rap, produce, play, whatever it is, and audiences or their appreciators, music appreciators, dismiss bad behavior. We're seeing it in the news with one in particular as of late. Artists, we don't get our coattails pulled enough because we have the talent. People see the dollar signs. So often people are going to be quick to say, oh, well, they're just acting out. They're just young. They're just artistic. They're just eccentric. They're just unusual. And somebody needs to say, hey, man, you need to knock that off. Accountability. I don't think artists talk enough or converse enough or even think enough about personal accountability. Like you said, when you show up to the bandstand, how you show up, what you're wearing, what you're not wearing, how you're speaking, how you're communicating to the audience, how you're communicating to the other people in the bandstand, how you're receiving information, how you're interpreting it, just your energy on the stage. Gosh, this is something that I fight with all the time, and I'm ashamed at my big age of 54 to still acknowledge this, that I can often sink down into negative energy on the bandstand if something is happening that I'm not digging and not allowing myself to be in a place of like, you know what, this is what's happening now. Just be here. Respond, not negatively. Respond, not react. Respond and just adjust. You're riding a wave, or like, if you're riding the subway and the subway makes an immediate stop or takes off real fast. You just hold on, just do a little train surfing. And I really honestly, and I'm saying this out loud so that I can hold myself accountable. When I'm on the bandstand, I want to respond to music and not to the way that beat was dropped, or to the way that wrong note was played, or to the way that tempo dropped or sped up. I want to respond to music. To be fair, it's difficult when you have a group of musicians who aren't really on the same page. It's much more difficult. But when you have musicians who are kind of, we're cool here. Yeah, I really, I want my reactions and my responses to music to be honest and authentic, but I also want them to be mature and informed and full of love and not toxicity.
Yeah,
That's difficult as a young musician
yeah.
because young cats are hot-headed, fat. Come on. Calm yourself. Calm yourself.
Think about that when you say that. If you were able to hang out with Stevie Wonder
Hmm.
and create a record tomorrow, what would the title of that record be? And it's something we could actually add a bonus track to outlay.
I would ask Stevie, hanging out with Stevie. Stevie, what influenced you in terms of literature, poetry, other songwriters, philosophers, icons of any kind? Because it just seems to me as though Stevie encompasses a utopian worldview. He just, it's like he embraces every and all things, and then he digests it, and then out it comes. How's this guy this in tune to life? The only other artists I can think of that impacted me that way, Nina Simone, you know, those two, just endless pearls of wisdom being dropped and such unusual gifts. I wish I had a fraction of the courage, the bravery, and the fortitude of someone like Nina Simone, Mississippi Goddamn. And she says, and speaking of social justice, she says, oh, I would lay down my life. She said, everybody is willing to die, but nobody wants to kill. I'm like, whoa, hold on, Miss Simone, wait a minute now. You talking some, you know. And what I appreciate about social media, just to take a little tangent, is that our young people are now finally being exposed to the words that are now 50 and 60 years old of people like Malcolm X and James Baldwin, stuff that you and I grew up hearing in the neighborhood and was powerful then. Hearing it now is just the world is catching up to them when they've been saying it all along, all along. And I love that young people are finding themselves, especially young black people, are finding themselves influenced and inspired by people like Nina Simone and James Baldwin and Malcolm X, and also discovering what really happened to Africa, also deconstructing and unpacking, decolonizing our minds and our literature and our world and our education, finding out about Patrice Lumumba, and then connecting that to the Louis Armstrong tour of Ghana, of Africa, a few years before. And people go, what? Yeah. And it sounds far-fetched, but the more you start unpacking and piecing things together, connecting dots, it's like, oof, it's wild.
You've been gifted all your life
Mm.
uh, and had music all your life. But when you're born in a Philly and you make it to Los Angeles, two of the biggest musical cities in the country, what's it like to put on that cape? Because being able to be in LA is a very, you know, kind of makes you walk in the sunshine. And Philly has such a soul, and there were so many Philly sounds that continue to come out of Philly, but clearly you're in that movement where you had great music coming out of Philly, and LA is the bastion. Everybody wants to go, and they can dress wherever way they want to dress. They can be whoever they want to be. They can be with girls that they couldn't necessarily be with down in some of the other states, but they could definitely be with them, and all the good stuff, the crops that they have to grow that they could smoke. But all of a sudden you find yourself there. How magical and how beautiful was it to grow up in LA, and how did that impact you and your music?
I think it's a story that I share with not only other artists, but with anybody who's lived in various places in this country. The fact that the further east you go in this country, you see it's far more populated. And the further west you go, the states get bigger, and it's less populated. And LA is like the final frontier, as they called it. It takes a while for things to make it 3,000 miles across the coast. Growing up in Philadelphia and spending a lot of time in New York and also in North Carolina, there's a certain type of intensity in the culture that has an impact on everyone that just is functioning day to day, and that's going to impact the art, obviously. Living in Los Angeles, which is a much bigger city and has sort of entertainment built in. It's like the undercurrent of Los Angeles, the undercurrent of the entertainment scene, entertainment industry. The issue is there's no conflict. Like you said, it's sunshining every day. Now, it hasn't been like that. It's been pretty funky this year. We've had a lot of marine layer stuff, and the weather's been up and down, very schizophrenic. It's gray outside right now. Yesterday it was beautiful, 80 degrees. Today, 70. You just never know. Just wait a few minutes and then you'll get all four seasons. But the issue, or my observation about Los Angeles, is that there isn't enough conflict in the city to create art that can truly be taken seriously. Now, that's a loaded comment, and I have to be very careful and I have to qualify. By first, it's like saying, well, it's not all men, I have to say, Los Angeles has some great jazz musicians, don't get me wrong, and I'll list a handful, and the other ones, they know who they are. Scott Mayo, John Clayton, Billy Childs, Patrice Rushen, Benny Maupin. I can go on and on and on. But Los Angeles is so big. There's no central location. There's no one area where musicians can just converge and you'll see the entire scene. Unlike New York, Philadelphia, where the concentration is much smaller. You can walk from one club to another, Village Vanguard to Sweet Basil, well, not Sweet Basil, but the Blue Note, Smalls, Mesro. That's just how New York is designed. LA is not designed that way. You got to have a car. That's problematic for any thriving artistic scene for Los Angeles to be as big as it is. And the issue is it takes you 20 minutes to drive 2 miles. And I think there may be 3 major jazz clubs in Los Angeles. 3 spots where, the pay is decent and the audiences are there. But it's very difficult to have a jazz scene in Los Angeles. There's good jazz musicians, but the scene leaves a little bit much to be desired for me. And again, a lack of conflict is not good for art. Artists, we don't create, we're more creative. We're more creative when we have problems to solve. Are we not? Because it's like the idea of expressing art is not just like, looking at Monet or Gauguin, give flowers and it's a beautiful impression. Impressionist art has a tendency to be very, but once you get into Cubism, you get into Picasso, and then you get into some Kandinsky. It's like some Romare Bearden. It's like some Jacob Livingston. Now we're seeing. Oh, okay, I see what's happening here. That's where you see the reflection of the culture, or the reflection of the times. I'm not saying one is better than the other. I just think that artists tend to be more productive when the situation like, hey, what's going on here? And we have to find a way to channel that. COVID And I'll close on this. When COVID hit, I, like every other jazz musician on the scene, panicked. It's like, oh my God, this is it. This is the Armageddon of jazz. Wayne Shorter's tune, Armageddon. I said, what's going on? No gigs. I said, okay. So after I kind of chilled for a second, I said, okay, well, I'm not about to get evicted because they're not doing that. I'll be cool. I got a little savings, but I don't know what's going on over there. I said, you know what? I'm about to turn this into lemonade. I went to the piano. I said, well, I got time to practice now. Since I ain't got no gigs, I got all the time in the world to practice. Practice for what? There's no gigs. Well, this can't last. I'll just practice, practice, practice. So well, maybe I'll go live. Yeah, you know what? Social media. All right, here we go. I can't play live in a club. I'll play live from my home. Here we go. Tune in, folks. Okay, good. Folks are sending me, Cash App, Venmos. I said, okay, you pivot. And that's what artists do. This is what we do. And I think it's a life lesson for everyone. You just pivot. We're in some very funky times right now. I don't even know if I'm asking your question anymore at this point. I'm sorry, Munson. We're in some very crazy times right now, and what we're doing is we're not panicking. We're pivoting. We know history. We know our history all too well. And what we're not going to do is get caught out in these streets getting our heads beat. No, 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 no. We're not doing that. Not this time around. We're pivoting. We're doing it differently. We're protesting, but it looks very different.
Thank you for that. All right, Eric. For anybody coming to see you live, what is the last? Give me a 2 minute, 2 second. If they're coming to see you live, what's your message to them?
I want them to feel whatever they want to feel. I want them to feel all of the emotions. There's not a lot of anger in my music, at least not yet, or at least I don't think. But I do believe there's a lot of beauty, a lot of positivity, a lot of spirituality. I want them to feel all of that. And I want them to be able to detect some of the moments that may have anger in them. They might not sound angry in the way we think angry music should sound. Sometimes it's just a chord that I'm just rumbling, you know, seething anger, sort of an undercurrent. I want them to feel whatever they want to feel and hopefully be able to understand and sympathize, even if they can't empathize. I want them to be able to sympathize with where I'm coming from artistically.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is Munson Steve. We have been hanging out with my dear brother, phenomenal genius, Eric Scott Reed. Pick up his latest record out late. We're so proud of all that you continue to give to both the culture and to this life as we experience it as humans on jazz. I'm Munson Steve with Eric Scott Reed on Rolling Out Star Studio. Thank you so much, Eric.
Thank you, Munson. I appreciate you.